What's going on? Deontay back. And first off, I want to thank all the fellas, Brain Smasher, Marty Worm, Eric, for having me on the live stream about a week ago. And that was an awesome opportunity, something that, I've been watching those guys do the live stream basically every single week. I don't always get to watch live, but I go back and watch the archives, if you will. And I'd been watching every single time, and I absolutely love them. So being able to be a part of it was a cool experience, and a whole lot of people subscribed. In total, I ended up getting about 40 new subscribers. So welcome everyone to the channel. Today, I'm gonna do a video that I don't remember the originator who did it, but it's essentially my life in albums, my life in music. And this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and being that I'm a bit younger than some of the other people in the community, so my upbringing of music is different than you all. So hopefully you all enjoy. Also, shout out to 200 Stab Wounds. Great band. um, I don't have any CDs or records pulled out. I just wanted to go off the dome and just really kind of bring up all these memories. So to start off, my introduction to music is, my family, it's very stereotypical. So I'll say, I'm mixed. I always grew up in a black household. So my family was always very stereotypical in the music that they listened to, right? And so I grew up only around, hip hop, rap, R&B, and a little bit of soul music. And so that mainly came from my grandpa. My grandpa was very into the Marvin Gaye's, James Brown, Tina Marie, Average White Band, the Gap Band. Sorry if my voice goes out. I just woke up not too long ago, so I'm going to be drinking a little water. But anyway, so, that's kind of the stuff I was listening to, or was a little brought up around from his side of things. From my mom's side, she was into a lot of the 90s hip hop and then early 2000s hip hop. So, I was taking in the likes of, for early 2000s, DMX, 50 Cent, Ludacris. During that time, Nas's Godson came out. I think that was 2003. For 90s, I was listening to early Nas, Das EFX, Ghetto Boys, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's mainly what was played while we were driving. On the pop side of things, my mom was a big Beyonce fan and a Mariah Carey fan. And, fast forwarding to the first actual album, and I don't have albums to show, so I'll just put them somewhere right here. The first album that I actually remember, holding the CD for, seeing the CD for, was 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying. My mom had that CD, and I remember we listened to it in her car, and that's kind of my introduction to remembering, this is a CD, this is a physical format, this is a full album, this isn't just what you listen to, the singles on the radio. And to this day, I still love that record. I still love 50 Cent. And at this point, no rock, no metal, no country, indie, none of that kind of stuff was in my realm at all. As I got a little older, I know I mentioned on the live stream, I was always a big video game nerd. I played tons and tons of PS1 and PS2 games during that time. It was the early 2000s. I got my PS2 in 2001. And soundtracks were huge then. I wasn't into movies really at that time. It was just whatever movies my family would watch. And so me learning about, like, there would be a section in the games that would be called like jukebox or, whatever, where you could look at the soundtrack. You could a lot of times see the album art from which that song was taken from, and you could just listen to songs. And so you add that on top of the fact that I was and still am a huge wrestling fan. Back then, WWE was using a ton of nu metal and early 2000s hard rock, which I guess the genres people consider it post-grunge, because I guess they consider it where grunge would have went if like nu metal didn't come in. I don't know. But, you know, that's the type of stuff I was hearing because think about it. Undertaker's theme song, he was doing his American Badass gimmick. Rollin' from Limp Bizkit was the his song. Um, you know, he Limp Bizkit was in SmackDown versus Raw Just Bring It, which was one of the first PS2 games I ever got with my system. I got that and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. And so at that point, you know, I know who Limp Bizkit is. I don't know that like, oh, they're this like rock group or whatever, and that they're a part of this genre new metal. It was just, oh, I know they do the song "Rollin'," and I like that song because it's with the Undertaker. And some of the other songs that were kind of around that time that I remember would be like I want to say they had their theme songs for the pay-per-views were Saliva, they had Drowning Pool. Um, who else was big then that I'm trying to think of that they use? Those are like the two big ones. I remember a little bit older they used Seether, and in soundtracks and video games, that's where I got to hear a lot of my first comings of Breaking Benjamin, Chevelle, Powerman 5000, um, a new metal band from my city, San Antonio, the Union Underground, which they blew up and performed on. I think it was Ozfest '01. House phone ringing. You're gonna sit through it with me because I don't want to get up. So yeah, my family still has a house phone. We get a bunch of solicitors nowadays. People calling, "Are you voting for blah 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 blah?" Who is it? Is anyone important? I might edit this out. Nope, as usual. So yeah, Union Underground, they blew up. They performed on that Ozfest in like '01. And they actually had the theme song Across the Nation that was used for the opening every week on WWE Monday Night Raw for many, many years. So, you know, that's the stuff that I was hearing that wasn't hip hop, rap, pop music, that kind of thing. My first CD that I ever owned was, and again, artwork will be over here, Jibs. It was, I don't remember the album, but it was the album that had the song Chain Hang Low and King Kong. I was absolutely pumped to get that because during that time that song was absolutely fucking huge. It was all over the radio. You know, locally the radio station was 98.5 The Beat and repetitive as hell. You could probably hear Chain Hang Low like 6 times in an hour. um, but I wanted that CD, you know. And I remember when I got it, me and my family were eating at Golden Corral. And me and my grandma met my mom up there because my mom was on her lunch break from work. And I've always lived with my grandparents. And when we went to, or when we left Golden Corral, my mom surprised me with this Jib CD, and I remember being absolutely pumped to have it. And you know, I'm usually someone that I like all the music that I listened to when I was younger, but man, that Jib CD's bad. And I realized that was bad years later too. I was in my teenage years like, oh no, this is awful. And I want to say the Jib CD came out between the ages of me being like 8 and 10. The only other CD I remember myself actually wanting and buying was R. Kelly's Double Up. I remember getting that over one of the Air Force bases. It was Randolph Air Force Base. I bought that CD. So those are my two first CDs that I actually owned, that my family bought, that I remember. Fast forward a little bit to around 2006, 2007-ish. I would say more 2006. I was starting to kind of hate the direction that hip hop was going. I kind of was seeing that the hip hop was changing from this not early 2000s style that I had really come up on, where sure you had those quote unquote club bangers, but I noticed that the beats in the songs were different. They weren't exactly how I liked from the late 90s and early 2000s. Instead of, you know, having these guys that had really good bars, that could really rap and could really, in a way, tell a story while they rapped, we were getting these guys that were doing more of the club banger type music. You were getting, that's the rise of the Soulja Boy, and I think that guy Mims that had that "This Is Why I'm Hot." This Is Why You Not, or whatever that song was, you know, that kind of stuff. And the stuff was garbage, man. And even as a 10-year-old kid, I realized that. And so at that point, I had knew about rock music from these video game soundtracks, and I knew about some of these band names, but I never branched off or never, you know, went crazy into it. But I'd wanted to learn a little bit more about rock music at that time because I loved music. I wanted something I could attach to and, you know, say this is the music I like. And so during that time as well, I was trying to be like a little skater kid. You know, I got a skateboard. I was really into skateboard culture. I was learning about all the skaters and all the different, you know, companies. And I was at that time, Zoomies was huge before they became like a swag type store, which I can't even stand Zoomies now. But at the time, they were a legitimate skateboard shop. So you could go there and you could get gear if you wanted, like DC and Almost or Girl Skateboards or World Industries or whatever, right? And so, you know, I was into that scene and I kind of figured, well, skater kids, they listen to rock, they listen to metal. And so I started going back to these game soundtracks, not just the ones that were coming out in 2006, but going back to some of the ones I had heard from 2005 or 2004. And I would pop my disc in my PS2, and I would go to that jukebox section and listen to these songs again. And I would try and learn them, you know, memorize the lyrics, memorize the bands. What were these song titles? And so that kind of continued and developed. And it got to the point where I wanted to see if my family had any type of like rock at all. So in my grandparents' living room, still there to this day, they have these old school like kind of glass cabinets that are a part of like a big entertainment center. And inside the right cabinet is a ton of CDs. But, you know, most of it is all R&B, hip hop, that kind of stuff. And I figured there's like 150 CDs in here. There has to at least be one rock CD. I don't care what it is, there has to be at least one. I went through all 100 plus of those CDs. There's a grand total of two, count them, two rock CDs. So that means my mom at some point had bought these because I know my grandma wouldn't have. I know my grandpa wouldn't have. That was Limp Bizkit's, the hot dog or chocolate starfish and hot dog flavored water, and Korn Greatest Hits Volume 1. So that was very interesting to me that they had these CDs. And so I took those CDs, came back in my room, popped them as like a 3 CD changer thing that was originally my mom's when she was younger, that was now mine. And I listened to the fuck out of those CDs. And Limp Bizkit was easy to get into because I immediately clicked and was like, Rollin', Badass Undertaker from 2001, awesome. Like, Limp Bizkit's my shit. And I know people will harp on it. Like I said, I still like most of the shit I listened to when I was a kid. I know the lyrics to almost every single song off that Limp Bizkit album. And to this day, if I'm driving with you and you pop on that album, I will sing the lyrics to those songs. I will have a grand old time. I have the CD in my collection. I genuinely, like, I know a lot of people think that, what is it, Break Stuff is their, or not Break Stuff, Significant Other is their, like, popular album. To me, that album's great. You have fucking, they have Rollin' on there. That was one that had My Generation, which was huge as well, which was used for the WrestleMania 17 promo with The Rock and Undertaker. One of the best promo packages ever. I'm trying to think of some of the other songs. They had that one song that was like, where Fred Durst was like, this is dedicated to you, Ben Stiller. You are my favorite motherfucker. I told you, didn't I? Check. You know, there's that one. I don't know. It's so good. I can't even think of the songs. Oh, Living It Up is a great one. Living It Up in the Fast Lane. Yep. I'm about to sing a whole Limp Bizkit album on camera. But that was my jam. That was the first time that I'd ever heard, you know, a full album of rock music, of metal music. And the Korn Greatest Hits was cool too. And I feel like those albums were perfect for me to discover at that time, because for someone that predominantly had only listened to hip hop and rock, you add this new metal sound where you have these guys that are, especially with Limp Bizkit, where you have someone that's basically rapping over heavy guitars. It's super easy to get into. And to this day, I like prominent bass in the mix of a lot of albums because of new metal being my roots. You know, shout out to Sepultura. Like, I, knew when one of the first things I loved with Korn was Fieldy's bass playing. Because he does the slap bass, he does that real funky bass. The bass is just so freaking prominent in all those Korn songs that, like I said, to this day, if you have a band and I can hear that bass and that bass is going, or your bass player stands out in your band, I'm going to take notice of your band. And from that, I've always been someone that when I get into music, or sorry, when I get into anything, I don't just say like, oh, I like this. I go full on obsessive with it. Up until this point of being 2006, I was 10. I was into wrestling. I was into sports and I was into video games. That was like my big three things. And when I got into sports at 5 years old, because my grandpa bought me some basketball cards. It wasn't, oh, these basketball cards are cool. It was, I have to look at these cards. I have to memorize the player, what team they're on. I have to look on the back of the card, and I have to memorize the stats. I have to know that, Craig Hodges played for the Chicago Bulls and he won a 3-point shooting contest. I have to know the entire Larry Bird and Magic Johnson rivalry. And this is me at 5 and 6 years old, getting into wrestling at 3.5 years old. I was 5 years old knowing all about wrestling. I wanted to go, when I got into like kindergarten, first grade, I wanted to go to the public library at school and see if there was any books on wrestling because I wanted to learn about the stuff that happened in the 80s. My grandpa would tell me about the Bushwhackers and Coco Beware and Tito Santana and all these guys, and I was like, I gotta learn this. I gotta know all about this. What are these guys doing? And so that ended up happening with music as well. I found out about Korn and Limp Bizkit, so immediately Wikipedia, I know I mentioned on the live stream, was huge for me. I was older, so I didn't come in the age of, the whole magazines and tape trading and all that kind of stuff, or where you just go down to a record store and look at shit. So I went on Wikipedia, and this is 2006, going into like 2007, and you type in the band Korn or you type in Limp Bizkit, and you can look and see, a little biography on them. Okay, this is the band. This is what genre they are. Who did they tour with? I mean, I would read the entire Wikipedia page, and now it's a lot bigger than it was back then. Back then it was probably hella small, but I would read it to try and learn what other bands did they tour with, what label were they signed to, when did their first album come out, what were their album titles, all that kind of stuff. I started to obsess over it. And it was one of those things where you look at both bands and you see their genre, it'll pop up on Wikipedia. Korn is an American nu metal band from Bakersfield, California. So, nu metal, that's their genre, nu metal. Okay. So, I would go to their nu metal Wikipedia page and look and see what bands were similar. And I'm looking and I see Disturbed. Oh, I know Disturbed. They had some songs on a SmackDown vs. Raw video game soundtrack. They had the song Indestructible and what was it, Perfect Insanity? Is that the other one? And I'm like, okay, cool, I know them. Sevendust is nu metal. I know Sevendust. I know 2 of their songs. They were on a soundtrack as well. And Power Man 5000, When Worlds Collide, SmackDown vs. Raw, the first one. I started piecing together these band names with the songs that I knew from the soundtracks. And so at this point of being 10 going on 11 years old, I'm like, I'm a nu metal fan. I'm all about nu metal. I like heavy shit, horns, all that stuff. That was me, 10, 11 years old. So, going into 6th grade, that's when I did turn 11. You're doing your school shopping. I wanted a band shirt. And I kind of figured, my family doesn't like that kind of stuff. They would probably think, unfortunately, back then, they had a kind of that mindset of a lot of, I guess, heavy music was that white people shit. And so being that, I figured, like, if I see a band shirt that has like these skulls and all this crazy stuff, I probably won't be able to get it. So we went to, I believe the shop was called Evolution Skateboards. At this point, I'm still into skateboard culture. I'm no longer skateboarding, but I still love the culture and the clothes and all that kind of stuff. So we went to Evolution Skateboards, and I spot a Disturbed shirt. And it was a white Disturbed shirt that kind of honestly looked like a tap out Affliction style shirt, which were big at that time. And I was like, I want that shirt. So I told my mom, I was like, hey, I want this shirt. This is the only shirt that I want here. So my first ever band shirt was a white Disturbed shirt, and I had it at 11 years old going into the 6th grade. So during 6th grade, I'm discovering a little bit more music. I'm starting to get into a little more things. I'm paying attention to my game soundtracks. I went back to now learn about them more. At this point, I was on YouTube and I was looking up the music videos for a lot of these songs that I heard from soundtracks. And, I think. No, I didn't get an iPod then. I'm trying to think. I want to say 7th grade, I got my iPod, which I'll get into in a minute. But the next really big thing for me was that year I was in orchestra, played the viola. And my teacher, Mr. DeArmond, he decided to bring, my hair, he decided to bring Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock, which at that time was the absolute biggest thing. Obviously, being a video game nerd, I knew of it. I just never paid attention to it. He brought that to school and we played it on like our, before you go on Thanksgiving break or Christmas break. That changed that may be, besides actually getting into collecting, that's arguably the biggest thing that happened. Because I played Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. I played on easy mode because obviously I'd never played. And I think I played either like School's Out from Alice Cooper or like Before I Forget from Slipknot. One of those songs. It was probably the Slipknot song because I knew of Slipknot. And that changed everything. I went home. I said, this is what I want for Christmas. Like, I don't know what other big things you may have planned. All I want is Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. And my family made it happen. I got it that year for Christmas. I played the absolute fuck out of it. And I started, besides just playing it as like, oh, I'm playing this video game, I paid attention. I was like, what are all these artists? What are the song names? What years did they come out? What albums are these songs off of? That was my introduction to Alice Cooper, Weezer, Heart, Killswitch Engage, which I knew technically at the time, but I didn't know it was them because they did the theme song for the wrestler CM Punk like a year before, which was This Fire, or This Fire Burns is like the whole title. And they had the track My Curse that was on there. And that was my introduction to them. I was introduced to Slayer through there because of Raining Blood, Tenacious D, which they had the movie out at that time, so everything just kind of clicked. Guitar Hero 3 started filling these holes now for me where I'm like, I'm into nu metal, I'm into this hard rock, alternative rock stuff, I'm into classic rock, and there's some heavier stuff where it's like, oh, I like Killswitch Engage, which I didn't know was metalcore at the time. I just knew that there was screaming in this song. So, it's different, and kind of same thing with like Slayer, right? And Tom Araya's stuff. But I didn't get into Slayer yet. At that time, for me, Slayer was still just like, it's a Guitar Hero song. So, going into 7th grade, I start diving more and more into music. I now have more band tees. I have a Killswitch Engage shirt. I have a Megadeth shirt. I have a Metallica Kill 'Em All shirt. I had Korn. I had a Marilyn Manson shirt. I still had that Disturbed shirt. And I had a Guns N' Roses shirt because I had obviously Welcome to the Jungle. And so, my taste is starting to branch out a little bit, and I am now into like Metallica, Megadeth. I knew about Anthrax at that point. Still wasn't really into Slayer. Slayer didn't come till high school really, but that's kind of where my mode was, and that's when I also started to download music. So I at that point, this is 2008. I was in seventh grade, and I got an Xbox 360. And the thing with those hard drives on the Xbox 360 is you could actually rip CDs to them. So I still didn't have any like rock or metal CDs. I didn't think my family would buy me any, or if I asked like, "Hey, you want to give me this?" They'd be like, "What? No." So I was downloading stuff. So I started to download these full albums from bands, and I would go to Wikipedia, look at what album the full albums were, and then go and find them, download them, burn them to a CD, and then burn it to my Xbox. So that way, while I'm playing games, I could listen to the music while I'm playing the games. And so that was real formative because I started to take in full albums. And at that point, I hadn't really done that. It was more so just singles, the popular songs, what songs were on a soundtrack, all that kind of stuff when it came to rock and metal. So now, the first ones I remember getting was the first three Breaking Benjamin records, Chevelle's Venus Sarah, that 3 Days Grace record, 1X, a Metallica Greatest Hits, and not Rust in Peace from Megadeth, Countdown to Extinction. And those were kind of the first ones, and there was like a Disturbed one in there and shit like that. But I was listening to those constantly, and that opened me up to downloading more music. So I started downloading more music. So I'm starting to formulate these tastes, and I had a pretty big vast of downloaded music. And that's kind of where I was going into all the way to my sophomore year of high school. I was 15 years old. And one of my buddies, Ethan, who we had a similar path of listening to a lot of new metal stuff, but then he started to branch off to more like pop punk, indie rock, and I wanted to go heavier. And both of us had a pretty large portion of downloaded music. He's probably the only person I knew at that time that had a bigger downloaded library than me. And he had met Mauricio, who's still one of my best friends to this day, and he was really into music, but he was again more the pop punk, that kind of realm. And they both decided to start kind of collecting and buying CDs. And at that point, I just didn't get it because I had a terabyte hard drive. I'm like, I could fit all my music on here. But then something kind of clicked with me, and I thought, well, I love this music. I'm getting more into it. I kind of want to hold it. The being able to open it up, not have a burned CD, but have the actual real CD. This has a booklet in it that I could look through. It has artwork that I can enjoy. And it also was that fan thing of, if I'm a fan of this album, I can say, hey, look here, I own this album. So that's what I did. I was 15, it was in January of 2012, the year I turned 16, but I was still 15 at the time. We're in high school, and you have those semesters where you take like your midterms or whatever, and then you got to leave early. And I left with Mauricio. We all went to go get something to eat. We went to a flea market, and then we went to a bunch of CD exchanges, and I bought my first 3 CDs ever with my own money, and that was Korn Untouchables, Stone Temple Pilots No. 4, and Creed Human Clay. All albums I still have in my collection to this day. All albums I loved. And I remember coming home, my family being like, you were gone out all day. Like, did you have fun with your friends? All that kind of stuff. And I said, yeah, I bought CDs. And my family was like, huh? And I'm surprised they thought of that because I was really into music at that time. All that kind of stuff. But they were like, what CDs did you buy? And I showed them, and they were kind of like, why? Some of them were like, my mom understood Korn because she had that Greatest Hits CD. But for the other ones, they're like, oh, we know these, but like, why would you buy these, kind of thing? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, this is awesome. And I couldn't wait to rip them to my Xbox to be playing games and listening to them. And so that day spawned something in me. So pretty much I would beg my family every single, like once every week for the weekends to like, I want to go to a CD exchange. I need to see what CDs they have. And that's where a lot of my early CDs came from, was the CD exchange. Fast forward to age, well, I guess still technically at 15. So we'll skip because I'm getting into the collecting portion. Age 15, I'm now full blown, you're starting to get angry, a lot of stuff going on in life, teenage angst, if you will. I'm ready for heavier stuff. At that time, probably the heaviest stuff I was listening to was thrash, and then like there was metalcore stuff that had screaming in it. And so I wanted to hear something heavier. And doing research, looking at heavy metal music, what comes next? Death metal. So the first death metal band I ever hear is Cannibal Corpse, and I was fucking sold. Obviously, like a lot of people, Hammer Smash Face, first song I heard, and that changed everything for me. And that was the day that, to this day, death metal is my most listened to genre with hardcore. And I listen to death metal more than hardcore, to be honest. And, early on, looking up bands similar to Cannibal Corpse, doing the Wikipedia thing, I listened to Suffocation. I listened to 6 Feet Under, because obviously I'm fully invested. Like I said, when I get into something, I go into it. So who's the vocalist at Cannibal Corpse? Chris Barnes. Oh, he's no longer in Cannibal Corpse. There's a guy named Corpse Grinder there. What? His name is Corpse Grinder? This is metal. This is the hardest thing ever. That's what a 15-year-old kid's saying. It's still hard. Your name's Corpse Grinder. And I got that, what was it, Maximum Violence, 6 Feet Under, which to this day, that's a great record. Bonesaw, song sick. The first 6 feet, Maximum Violence, well, I'm going to have to look this up. I'm sorry I'm having to do this live. I feel like I haven't listened to 6 Feet Under in a long time. I have to look this up. Maximum Violence, that was that 1999 album, right? Someone in the comments is like, yes. Or, yes, Maximum Violence. And then, obviously, the first record, which the name's Haunted. Which, that album's still great. Greatest lyrics of all time. But, not greatest lyrics of all time, but, what do you say? I'm going on a tangent. Sorry. So, my mind's everywhere. This is why maybe I should have did notes. So, yeah, at that point, I'm fully into death metal. I'm like, I'm a metal kid. I fucking love death metal. All this stuff. And I started to buy more and more music. And, I was into, Trivium at that time. I had Trivium in Waves when it came out in 2011. Or not 2011. Early part of 2012. Because it came out in 2011. But I didn't buy it right when it came out. It was like a few months after, because that's when I got into collecting. I remember making my grandma take me to Best Buy to buy that album. And, I'm starting to stockpile more CDs. A lot of classic stuff. It was kind of like, in a way, filling holes. All this shit that I was hearing when I was younger, and I was just kind of developing my taste. And so, fast forward again to, I'm collecting more and more, still just CDs. We get to the point, I'm about 18 years old. Or 17, gonna graduate high school, because I graduated 17. This was 2014. And I discovered black metal. And for me, that was kind of, I actually got into hardcore technically after black metal, but for me, black metal was this huge extreme, because I remember there was a kid that was into Watain, and, Mauricio, who was into pop punk, and me, who was not into that kind of stuff. The heaviest I'd gone was, 90s death metal. Watain sounded funny to me. I remember Mauricio playing a Watain song one time. He looked it up on YouTube, and we laughed. Now I like Watain. But, I wanted to get into black metal. I wanted something heavier than death metal. I wanted something more extreme. Something that was satanic, right? That's what you're thinking when you're 17. And I did the whole Wikipedia thing. Looked up list of black metal bands. Did the whole scroll. And the name that sounded interesting to me was Tishajuder. And that's when I went to YouTube and I listened to their debut album, Kill for Satan. And I don't know if it was just needed some angry shit, but that album, it clicked. And from that moment on, that's what got me into black metal. And I love that record. I have it. I bought it at Waterloo Records in Austin, Texas, probably 4 years ago now, in 2016. It's so good. And I think the reason why is, I think the first track, which is The Demon's Gate, I think it opens up and it has the clip where he says, do I look like someone who cares what God thinks? And then it cuts right into, I can't think of his name. I think it's Nag. He just goes into his fucking screaming, and I was blown away. And then the riff slows down, and then you hear that demons open the gate, and then it cuts right back into the song. I was sold. You know, it was theatrical in a way. It was heavy, it was aggressive, but it was also very relaxing at the same time. Totally couldn't explain it, but yeah, thanks to Tish Juder, thanks to Kill for Satan, because of that, I got into black metal. So when I think the last kind of formative thing happened in my life was really when I started collecting heavy. And so I was collecting CDs, like I said. At that point, when I graduated, I had maybe like 4 or 5 records. I had Metallica Kill 'Em All on vinyl. I didn't even have a record player. I was just collecting them for the day that I bought a record player. I had Metallica Kill 'Em All. I had Lamb of God, the 10th anniversary of As the Palaces Burns, which I don't like that mix anyway. Um, I had some hip hop records actually. I had How You Like Me Now from Kool Moe Dee. I had an Ice Cube single. I think I had a Nas record. What else did I have? I had like one other album, and you know, when everything kind of hit, I ended up doing like at that point I had a decent sized CD collection, and I decided, I was watching people on YouTube, and the people I was watching on YouTube was mainly video game collectors, and there wasn't really too many people out there showing music. It was like one or two. And so I talked about this on live stream. I used my old grandma's iPad. I was sitting down over here. I had like a little stool or ottoman. I would sit on the ottoman just like this. I had the iPad propped up on a stand, and I would just record myself talking about a CD. It would be, here's a shout out to the Sandman ECW. I'd be like, you know, oh, this album, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be talking about like Limp Bizkit or Korn or Disturbed or Seether or whatever, because that's a lot of what my collection was at that time. Even though I had gotten into heavier music, I still hadn't bought like a lot of death metal. That stuff didn't come till after high school. And everything kind of hit after high school. Once college came, I was working, of course. I was able to make my own money. So I was buying a lot more albums, buying a lot more band tees, learning about more bands, going to more shows, because at that point I was able to go to shows by myself. My family was really weird about me going to shows by myself. And so the first show I ever went to by myself was Ringworm and Goatwhore, which I learned about Ringworm, shout out to the Human Furnace, for the first time, and Goatwhore, which I was already a big fan of. And so that was 2015, June of 2015, I think, or June. Yeah, June of 2015, because that 2015 record I think was just coming out from Goatwhore. So yeah. And sorry, I'm yawning. I'm still tired. But yeah, man. So that's kind of where my musical path led me, and here we are today, where I have close to 1,200 things in my collection. Probably about 600 or 700 CDs. I'd say about 600 CDs. Tons of records, which you can see the crates behind me because I don't have room for like a actual kind of thing. And then I have tapes down there, which I don't know how many tapes I got. Maybe around like 50 tapes. And I'm full blown into it. A lot of it thanks to YouTube. A lot of it thanks to me just being an absolute psychopath and needing to learn stuff. I mean, the last thing I'll say is, I've accepted the fact that now I'm not going to be able to hear anything, but, back in 2012, 13, 14, when I was into everything at that point, like, I would go down the Wikipedia list and it would be like list of albums list of heavy metal in 2014. And I would go try and listen to basically every album from either a band name that I had heard of or already knew, or if I didn't know the band, I would scroll over it, look at the genre, and based on the genre, I'd listen to it. So I think in 2014 I listened to probably about like 80 albums. And then that increased. Like 2015, I listened to 100. 2016, I listened to probably over 130 new albums. And then 2017 was kind of the first time where that slowed down. And I got sidetracked, and I realized, holy shit, I started working full time in 2017, and I was like, I'm working full time. I was hanging out with friends more. That was the first year that I ever had a girlfriend, so I was dating someone, well, in the early part of 2017. And, I just didn't have that time to just sit at home and play video games and listen to metal all day. And so that happened. But yeah, so that's kind of my story and what led me to here. And now I'm into everything. You guys on YouTube get me to buy shit all the time. And yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you liked it. Please subscribe and comment down below. What do you think?